Hey everybody, welcome back to the third part of the Coder Lab tutorial series for the Spiderman controller. So what we're going to do is we've got our project so far where we can swing, and if we press space we can change the pivot point. Now we're going to take that concept a little bit further and actually put it onto a controller so we can swing around and move around like Spider-Man, as well as change pivot points to buildings. So what we're going to do is first, this tutorial is set up a little bit differently. The first thing you're going to do is download some files that I've prepared for you, and I'll share this link in the description. So first up, we just download these. Scanning for viruses, okay. Save it. So if you don't have WinRAR, that's a free program. I can provide a link for that too. Okay. So all we do is extract this. It'll be down here somewhere. And you should have 3 scripts in there. So what we're going to do is import them into our Unity project. So I'll open that back up for you to see again. Here it is. And then I'll drag and drop those into the project. So we've got a few errors that we have to take care of first, because there's been some changes to the swing controller, rather the pendulum script. So that MoveBob should now take 3 parameters instead of 2 in order for us to use it on our controller that we have here, this swing controller. So I'll show you. If we open up swing controller, I'll go through this in detail, but the first thing we have to do is modify it so that our pendulum script now has a third argument, which is the previous position. So what we'll do is we'll open our pendulum script. Sorry, I've got 2 windows open there. It's a little bit confusing. Pendulum. So now MoveBob is going to have an additional parameter, the previous position. Previous position. We have this already up here. Previous position. I'm just trying to work out if at some point we already had this modifiable. Were we using it here? Get constrained velocity is using... Oh no, it's just using the previous position there. Previous position, previous position, previous position. Alright, what we'll do is I'll have a quick look in the finished version to make sure that I'm telling you guys to do the right thing. Okay, save. So there's actually 2. Yeah, you can override it. So this is what we had in our last project. See how it's just got the 2 parameters at the top here? Yep. So we'll basically copy this function. And we'll add a new parameter in, and then we'll be using the previous position here in get constrained velocity. And the rest of the code will stay the same. So let's do that now. Pendulum. So my mistake, guys. I'm sorry. What we'll do is we'll put it back to how it was. So the only thing I changed was that extra parameter. You can just leave it, as in leave it as it was prior to me changing it. And this time what we'll do is we'll just copy the whole thing below it, and we'll put in a new parameter vector 3 prev pos, and instead of using previous position here, we'll use prev pos. And that's really the only difference. So now our other script shouldn't have, oh, I've got the two scenes open again, shouldn't have any issues with that. Okay, so we've cleared that problem. Now the problem we're getting is there's another new method we've got to add to our pendulum script, and it's going to be fall. It's a fall method, and it'll just use our gravity to make the pendulum fall while we're not swinging, because in our controller we have the option to detach ourselves from a building, and at that point we don't want to be constraining our velocity, we just want to be falling because we're not attached to anything anymore. So we'll add that one in as well, our fall method. And just like before, I'll quickly go over to my other project over here on the side that you guys can't see, and double check what the implementation is for that. So there's a new method called fall, and we just take in our position and a time, and then we just use the methods we've already got, everything except constraining the velocity. And that's as simple as it is. So I'm hoping that's on screen enough for you guys to actually see what we do in this one, because I won't type it out, I'll just copy it across so you don't have to watch me type. It's a little bit boring. And I'll just add it in to the pendulum so that it can be used by our controller. Just format it. There we go. Public vector 3 fall. And we'll save it and go back. Okay, so now our imported scripts are all good. We don't have any problems there. So this test scene is great, but we need to put some buildings and things in. We've just got two balls here, and it's going to be a little bit tricky to convert this. So what we'll do instead is we'll just create a new scene. Create new scene. We'll call this one swing, and open that up. And now we can get started on actually using our new scripts in here. So the first thing we need to do is put a controller and a player in the scene, and the controller will be attached to our player. So we'll create a new game object called player, and we'll zero out the transform so that it's right smack bang in the middle of the screen. And on this player we're going to do a few things. We're going to attach, we're going to create a capsule to represent the player, and we'll just put that underneath the player. Then we're going to take the capsule collider, remove that component, and we'll put it onto the player's transform itself. Capsule collider. There we go. Just so it's a bit easier to see what we're playing with and it's not hidden in a child object. And the other thing we need is a character controller component, because this is what we're going to be using in our script. So once we've got those two things, we also need to make sure that our capsule is ignoring raycasts, because we're going to be taking care of that on the parent object, so we don't need this capsule to actually do anything to stop us moving around, which is a problem I had a little bit earlier. So now we can just attach our swing controller script to the player. We've already got a camera in our scene, so we can add that main camera. And you can see we've got our pendulum here already. So our bob transform is going to be our player. We don't have a tether in the scene yet, so let's add that now. It's a new game object, and we'll call it feather. No, we'll call it tether. We'll go back to our player and add that as the tether transform. Excellent. Let's just make sure the bob is set up correctly. So we've got gravity of 20. Yep, drag. Let's make that 0.001. And let's make the max speed 50 for now. Excellent. And speeds, jump speed and gravity are all okay, so that's fine. And we've got our tether in the scene, we've got our player, our main camera. So now we're just floating around in the middle of space, which is okay, but we need something to actually stand on and also to grapple onto, swing past. So we'll add those things now. So let's add something to stand on first. Just a cube should be fine. And let's make this cube, let's say 10 by 10. 10 by 10 in the X and Z transforms. And we'll say it's a little bit lower than the player, so -3 on the Y. Excellent. So now we've got something to stand on. And we also, on our main camera, need to add some camera controls. So we'll add camera look to the camera. So the settings for these are already pretty good. We've got 4:4, -70 and 70 for the angles that you can look at and how fast we're moving around. Then we just need to add what we're looking at, which is the player. And the camera transform, which is our main camera. So this is a pretty stock standard camera look script that I just found and modified slightly from the internet. Nothing too special going on in this. So we won't look directly at that one. You can look at that in your own time if you're curious. Where are we up to now? Let's just have a play and see what happens. So, as you can see, we've got the player colliding with things already. We can look around. If we press WASD, we can move around. If we press space, we can jump really, really high. So that's a good standard sort of controller, third-person-ish controller that we've got at the moment. Now we just need to add something to what am I saying? Attach onto. So a building. Let's add one now. Game object. Let's just say cube. And let's make this, maybe 30 by 30, so pretty big. And we'll put it out in front of our player a little bit, just moving on the Z-axis to about 90-ish. Okay. So now that we've got, it's pretty far away, let's move it back into about 60. We've got our massive cube, absolutely huge. And now we'll add a second one to demonstrate our collision. So I just duplicated that and I'll slide it down. So this is one that we can collide against. How are we going to make that work? Well, we'll add a rigid body component to it and we'll set all the constraints because we don't want this to move anywhere or rotate at all. And we'll increase the size of the bounding box a little bit. So say 1.1 on the X and Z because we don't want it to look like our player is intersecting with the mesh when we hit it. And this allows us to hit it just a little bit further out than the actual mesh itself. So that now that's set up. The last thing we need to do is attach a rope script. So this is what lets us see the tether itself, or the Spiderman web, or whatever you would like to show it as in your game, when we're swinging around and when we're attaching to things. So we'll just look for our rope script. And as you can see, it's already attached a line renderer for us, which we will set the width of to 0.1 so that it's quite skinny. And we need to put a bob and target on there. So the bob is going to be the thing that's swinging. In this case, it's the player. And the target is going to be our tether point. Excellent. When we play this, it'll come up as pink because there's no material on it yet. So we can actually add that now. We'll create a... where's our material? Here's our material. I'll just check that I'm actually... Yep, I'm recording. That's good. Let's call it rope mat. There we go. And let's set it to, I don't know, let's set it to maybe an orange color. Feeling in an orange mood today. Excellent. So there's a few hiccups here that will occur. And I'm looking for your help in the comments if you find solutions to these issues. One is that the tether point sort of goes back to where the tether is whenever we change tether points, as you'll see, which isn't too big a problem, and I might find a fix for that. If I do, I'll put it in the comments. And there's another slight problem with the collisions where we will clip into the surface at some points. So those are the two things I haven't been able to fix yet. I'm sorry about that. And I'll let you know as soon as I work out what's wrong with them. But at this point in the scene, we can actually... Ooh, hello. Oh, I didn't actually apply the the orange color to our script. But that's okay. We can... let's just see what's going on here. So we've got our rope. What's happening is the line renderer is enabled, which means that even if we're not swinging, we can see our connection to a tether point. The way we can stop that happening is by disabling it straight away in the scene itself, by going to line renderer and unchecking it. And then the rope script will take care of enabling and disabling the tether point. So now if we play, you can see it's not there. So we can jump, and if we click, whoa, I've clicked onto myself. Whoop, and you can right click, sorry, to detach yourself from something. So I thought I took care of that because I had the capsule ignoring the raycast. But what I really needed to do was make the player ignore the raycast. And you can change children as well. So now I won't collide with myself. We're almost there, guys. We've almost done it. Okay, and let's go back to the tether and add our rope mat material so that we get a nice orange color. Rope mat material, there we go. Play it again. Okay, here we go. Oh, there we go. So we've got our rope. We're colliding with this object. And if we hit it, we clip through it a little bit there. But for the most part, bang. And we can detach and attach ourselves to new points. See if I can get it. No, I missed it. Oh, and this one. There we go. Excellent. So we're swinging around. The controller also supports steering mid-air, so I can go left, or I can go right. So it's a little bit more arcadey this way. I can accelerate myself. detach, attach myself again, steer left and right. So it's all working. The last part of the video is that I'll just show you those scripts and how they work with what we've already done. So on our player, we have our swing controller. Let's have a look at that. So from the top, we have these variables, swing, jump speed, and gravity, that control our player when we're not swinging. Because when we're swinging, remember, we're using our pendulum script. This is just in the case where we're walking around. Got a move direction, which is currently set to 0. This is what we're using to move ourselves when we're not swinging. We have a reference to our controller and our camera, and we have these states. So this is a numerable called state, and it just sets 3 up for us: swinging, falling, and walking. So at any one point, our swing controller is going to be in one of these 3 states. Obviously, we have our pendulum, which we're going to use when we're swinging around, and our previous position. We use our distance to ground to work out if we're colliding with the ground when we're walking, and our hit position to deal with collision logic. So at the start of our script, we get references to our character controller and our capsule collider, the bottom of our capsule collider in particular, to see what the distance to ground is set as. We set our previous position and find where our parent is for our tether, and we set the state to walking. So here's where the magic happens. Every frame, we determine what state we're in, and then, depending on what state we're in, we perform the required action for that state. So that's how I've set it up to work. So how do we determine what state we're in? Well, we say if we're grounded, then we're always walking, never anything else. So whenever we hit the ground, we're just always walking. If we've pressed fire 1, so the left mouse click, and we've hit something, then we set our state to swinging. This little bit of logic makes it a bit more confusing, but basically what we're saying is if we've hit something but we're walking, then we set our velocity to the velocity that we were moving at while we were walking along, so that it's less jarring. So this is a bit of a misnomer, because when we're in our walking state, we can actually jump around. So say we've just walked to the edge of a cliff and we jump off it. We're still in the walking state, but say we've just pressed left mouse click to actually grapple onto a building. We've got all this velocity that we had before we started moving as a pendulum, and we want to give all that velocity to the starting velocity of the pendulum so that it doesn't jerk suddenly when we click. So that's what that little bit of logic is doing. But yeah, in a nutshell, if we press left click, then we're going to start swinging as long as we've hit something. If neither of those conditions are met and we've pressed right click, so we want to detach from something, then we're going to transition into a falling state as long as we were swinging. So it's a little bit complicated, but this state machine it's really only, what is that? 56 to 85. It's like 30 lines of code. And all of that is driving our entire simulation. So it's pretty cool. So this whole thing is, it just sets our state variable. So what happens is, once we've got our state variable from here, we just do the necessary action. So when we're in a swinging state, we do the swing action. And this is where we can do our steering. So we steer, and we add that to our velocity, and we move the bob. Very simple. So it's almost the same as what we were doing in the other test scene. When we're falling, we set the arm length to infinity, so we don't actually get constrained. And we fall. We use our fall scripts. That just, remember, that modifies everything except the constraint in our pendulum. And when we're walking, we do some standard third-person character controller logic by using our mouse keys and our camera to work out which direction we've input movement, and then we move the controller in that direction using a built-in controller.move command. It's very simple. On controller collider hit, if there's something called respawn, then we just load the scene again. So I'll add that in after this, so that we can reset the level. One issue with this is that the lights don't get rebuilt properly. If you have a solution for that, let me know. But it's cool because it means that we can just keep practicing our swinging, and if we hit the ground, then it'll just pop us back to the top of the level again to play more. On collision enter, so this is where if we hit the side of a building, this logic, this function kicks in, and it says, based on our direction when we hit the wall, we want to slide along the wall. That's what this is doing. So it works out sort of the amount of angle between us and the direction of the normal of the wall, and sets our velocity to something that slides along the face of the wall. And the same thing, if it's a respawn, then we load the scene just like on controller collider hit. So you can see that working. I'll add in a respawn object into the game. Let's add another one in here. Let's just go add a cube again. Let's say it's 30 by, let's say it's 60 by 60. So pretty big. And we'll put that below the bottom cube, and we'll call it respawn. Let's hope I spell it properly, respawn. Okay, and I'll save that. So what should happen is if I play this and I land, I'll swing onto that. Oh no, I'm gonna keep missing it. Ooh. So that was a bad way of showing it, but essentially when you hit an object called respawn, it'll drop you back at the top of the scene. And as you can see, we've got this weird problem of the lights not being in the scene, which is very interesting. But boom, if I drop myself, bam, it'll just start me up here again. So that's it, everybody. That's the whole Spider-Man controller. So just as a wind up and a tie up of the series, I'll go through what we've accomplished. We can start the game and have a person here that we can wander around with and look around with. And if we jump off of something, we can also grapple onto a surface. With our mouse button, we can steer. We can see the line that we're on. We can collide with things. And if we want to, we can catch ourselves and keep swinging. So thanks for following along. If you have any questions, feel free to post them in the comments. I'll do my best to work out if what solutions there are to answer them, or if I can help out, then I will. And thanks for watching. Bye.